They are schedule.
Hello art family, and thank you to all the new subscribers. For this video, the kind people at Etchr were very generous and sent me a couple watercolor blocks, their new watercolor blocks, to try out and do a video of. They are 9x12 and 100% cotton, and they come in cold press or hot press. Cold press has a little bit more tooth and texture to it. Hot press is like smoothed out flat. So it's kind of like pressed flat. My personal preference, although this is just a personal preference and not like a law, because I see people paint with either or, is I really like transparent watercolor on cold press because I like the way the tooth picks up some of the interesting textures, you know. And then on hot press, I like to use gouache, although you could use either for both or other media as well. I find hot press to be much easier to use for like a mixed media approach if you're using gouache or if you're using other stuff on top of it. I just find it layers really well, but with the transparent watercolor, I find you get more kind of interesting burns and textures, which you might like if you're using transparent watercolor on a hot press, but I personally just happen to like gouache and mixed media for hot press, transparent watercolor on cold press, but that's just a personal preference. So the way blocks are, if you don't already know, is it's like a pad of 20 sheets of watercolor paper that are then glued all around the outside except for about a 1-inch gap. So it holds the paper down as you paint, so the paper doesn't curl on you as you're going, and you don't necessarily have to tape it down. A lot of times I still tape it down just because I like the look of a finished clean edge on a painting, but you don't have to tape it down. So it makes them super handy for traveling with watercolor paper because you can just throw it in your bag and open it and paint on it and cut the sheet out when you're done and put it somewhere else. But I've done other videos with Etchr before and also bought their products. I am a big fan of their travel stuff. Their travel bags are fantastic for sketching on the go, and I really like their Etchr Perfect sketchbook. It's a little on the expensive side, but I get that it's kind of hard to get quality materials in a decent sketchbook and keep it affordable. But those sketchbooks are just fantastic, the perfect sketchbooks that they produce. And I was interested in trying out these papers because I end up getting asked to do quite a few videos on blocks from a variety of different companies. And a lot of times they aren't sized or 100% cotton. And it ends up with a affordable sheet, but it's a little more kind of student grade, and it can't quite take the material very well, especially the way I tend to paint, which is pretty hard on the materials and the brushes and all my stuff. I tend to work very heavily wet into wet for most of the painting, and then detail stuff towards the end. So I was interested to see how the paper would hold up. This is the cold press first we're starting out with. So I'm just going right into it, painting a scene from Pike Place Market, and immediately I start by soaking the paper. That's a problem I tend to run into using blocks, is when you saturate it with water and then you go to paint a kind of wet into wet approach where you want stuff to be sort of soft and melty, it can get very bloomy and fuzzy because it's drying unevenly. So you kind of want paper that will hold the water and the paint on the surface for a little bit while you do whatever you want to do, and then it all sort of drops together kind of relatively evenly. And I was really happy with how this paper held up in terms of really saturating it with water and then working wet into wet. If you're working in this approach where you have it wet, it's important to remember to kind of keep a spray bottle handy because it'll dry. You don't want it to dry as you're going because it'll start getting hard edges everywhere. So for all the stuff in the distance, I wanted it to be kind of fuzzy and push it further back and kind of elevate the saturation and contrast as you get closer to us to make it push that stuff back and pull stuff forward and kind of create a telescoping effect that pushes stuff into the distance. So I felt like this paper held up really well. A lot of times you'll get it where it will start drying. Like if you pull a shape, it'll start drying halfway on the one side of the shape before you get to the other side of the shape, and then you end up with very kind of uneven marks. So I really like that. This is also, it's 100% cotton paper, so it holds up really well with the this approach. I felt like it held up really well working wet into wet. This is my preference to work with transparent watercolor on cold press paper. So you can see, because this is the cold press paper, it has quite a bit of tooth to it, so there's quite a bit of texture going on, which I find can kind of be a struggle with gouache, although I know a lot of gouache painters that use cold press. So it is possible to do, you know, anything you want with the paper. You just have to keep in mind that the cold press is going to have some extra tooth to it. So now I'm working on the hot press sheets to give that a try. And I did tape around the outside, although you don't have to do that on a block because it's glued around the outside, so it shouldn't curl on you. This is another scene from the same location, but inside the market at Pike Place. And I just thought it'd be interesting to try to sketch this table of vegetables. And I'm kind of also going at this one pretty hard wet into wet at first, although I'm using a much thicker paint here. This is gouache, so it's opaque watercolor. So the end effect will hopefully be a little bit more kind of like an acrylic or oil painting, because I'm trying to make it a more opaque painting here. But I started out very wet into wet, also kind of trying to push what the paper could do and take and handle. And I also felt like this handled that really well. So I think it'd be interesting to paint with transparent watercolor on the hot press as well, just to see what you can get, because starting out with this one, and I usually kind of start in that approach in general, which is I'll wet the whole page and then create a kind of soft array of warm and cool kind of grays. And sometimes I'll think of the cool as sort of something I want to push away or back, and then the warms as the thing I want to highlight or bring forward. And sometimes I'll also focus on local color too. You know, if there's like a red apple, I'll grab a little bit of red. But I typically, for gouache, will start in the first gear of like 80%, 90% water, and just get rid of the white altogether, because you don't want little peppered highlights all over the place. You want to kind of knock everything down just a little bit, and that gives you the room to move up and down in value. So I knock out the white by doing a kind of sort of a wet into wet, although I'm less concerned with the texture of the approach because I'm going to paint opaque on top. Sort of shift into two gears. There's one gear which is getting rid of the white and creating a kind of wash over everything. And then the next gear, which is what I'm deep into now, which is next to no water. Only enough water to get the paint to move. And then I try to think about planes and big simple shapes and work my way around, kind of picking out those shapes. First starting with the very big shapes and then progressively getting smaller and smaller as I go, subdividing the shapes into little areas and then kind of doing the detail towards the end of the painting. So I'm towards the end now, so I'm getting into the detail. But I really liked how this paper held up too as well. So once we pull the tape, you can see I liked the way it handled the gouache. It's all cotton paper, so it holds paint really well. In terms of price, it is a higher grade paper, it is a nicer paper, and it held up like a nicer paper. So that is one thing I'll say that's a positive about it. It is a little bit less than some brands like Arch is, but you still get a high quality paper. So it's definitely worth checking out and looking into. So thank you so much, Etchr, for sending me the paper, and thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. In the meantime, happy sketching.